I want to talk to you about how to properly set up a server this year. Okay, how do you do it for your small business or for your home enterprise, if you will? It can be a mid-sized company, it can be your small business, it can be let's say a sole proprietorship. So here are the generalities I want you to pay attention to. So if you think about setting up a server for your primary operation, it's important to understand that your data needs are going to be critical. Storage, for instance, okay, archiving, safety, and so on and so forth, and also encryption. So as your business grows and you take on, let's say, more employees, the time will come where you need a server to keep your office network and business running efficiently, especially if you are in a very competitive field. It's okay. And the cool thing is that you have to understand that a server is not just the end goal here. It's just the beginning. Let me first define what a server really is. A server is simply a powerful computer used to serve up information and software to employees, customers, and other computers. For example, if you have 5 employees each working on a different computer, a server will allow them to allow them all to access the same software and documents, even if they're not all in the same building. So that's kind of cool because it gives them more efficiency. So by having data served from a central computer, instead of having multiple versions of the files stored locally on each machine, not only is access easier, but control is greater. So access to certain information, such as personal files or payroll data, can be blocked except for authorized employees. Okay, so that's kind of important in terms of planning your operational efficiency. Now, once you have 2 or more computers in your business or need remote access to the company network, you want to invest in a server. Okay, doing so will allow you and your employees to access software and files from anywhere and give you, let's say, greater control over access rights to certain information. So that's kind of cool. And in terms of the types of servers for businesses, you have a lot of them. The thing is that most commonly, SMBs use servers for secure email hosting, website hosting, document storage, e-commerce hosting, hosting line of business applications, data backup, and recovery. One thing I need to say here is that proxy servers are also worth considering for businesses of any size. So by routing web traffic and access through a proxy, your network's IP addresses are protected from a public view. So that's important. And this anonymity offers your business an additional layer of security that you need anyway. So let me give you the setup here. How do you create a file server for your small company? First of all, the step number one, selecting the equipment and network components. Okay, so when I think about the equipment and network components, I'm speaking about the firewall, the cabling, the switch, the wireless access points, computers, the servers also. Okay, so the firewall is an important network component that fends off attacks trying to get into the office server, and its main job is to scan all the traffic in and out of the system and network. It serves actually as the first line of defense, which is why it's important to invest in a high quality firewall. Okay, cabling, yeah, you need cabling because the network cable is needed for every device in the network to actually boost the team's performance. The switch is important also because this is a tool that connects all the devices in the system, wireless access points, computers, and servers. Okay, that's the first step: selecting the equipment and network gear, if you will. Number two, picking the right server. You want to pick the right server. So basically, you can choose whether you want to have things on premise or cloud based. While they both have their advantages and disadvantages, it all comes down to what exactly your business needs. Let me quickly explain for you what you need to know. Cloud based versus on premise servers. Now, cloud based servers work well for small and medium sized businesses with limited IT resources and physical space. They're not as quick for efficient operation as on-premise servers, but they're often enough to run basic business operations and applications. Okay, so that's kind of important. And so their low cost also makes them an attractive choice for startup businesses. Another benefit of using cloud-based servers is that they're not power dependent. The team still has access to files as long as they are uploaded in the cloud. Now, building physical servers requires a huge initial budget, but as a business owner, you don't have to pay a monthly fees. An on-premise server also gives the team better control over how everything is set up, as well as how the cybersecurity solution is actually integrated into the system. Now, one of the main downsides of using physical servers is that you have to think about the cost of replacing, let's say, damaged hardware, electricity consumption, and the time needed for cooling down the servers. So let's talk about choosing the operating system. If you are trying to create a file server for your small company, you need to really think about the operating system because a server requires special operating systems that are robust and designed to support a couple of users and devices simultaneously. And some of the most common operating systems for business servers are CentOS, Red Hat Enterprise Linux. You have Linux Ubuntu Server, and Windows Server Essentials. I have actually covered this on another show. So selecting the appropriate operating system is an important decision that affects the cost and usability of the servers. So think about what you really need. Think about the efficiency you're trying to really infuse into your company's operation. So when choosing the operating system for the network, please consider the following features. You want to think about user friendliness, think about support, think about customization, and most importantly, think about cost, right? Your budget is kind of critical. So user friendliness, you want to really think about ease of use, configuration, and installation. Support, well, if you think about Linux, for instance, Linux is an open source operating system, right? So your team might be spending most of their time online looking for ways to fix common issues within the server. On the other hand, Microsoft, for instance, has multi-channel customer support that employees may actually contact. Okay, and the cost, of course, the cost is an important element. Linux actually is more affordable than Windows because it is an open sourced software. Step number 4, you want to set up the server location. So servers should be really isolated in a room for security purposes. So controlling physical access to the servers help the team mitigate data security risks, and having a separate server room may even be needed to comply with certain regulations and requirements, especially if your industry is a little sensitive. Okay, high temperature might damage the hardware, which is why there should be a cooling system in the room instead of windows. It should also have enough space for employees to reach the front and back of each server. The hardware should be also stored in rack mounts rather, instead of desks. So be thoughtful of those. If you are trying to create a file server for your small company, think about configuring the server. So after installing the chosen operating system, you want to configure the server. Okay. Now, it really depends on the kind of server you have because the steps and complexity of setting up the server depend on its specific type and functionality. But let me give you a few configurations for Office servers. You want to set actually a secure administrator password. Configure the networking. So check if the default settings are already enough for the organization's needs. You want to add also a local admin accounts to the computers and you want to connect them to the server. You want to set the server as the domain controller. This allows the computers on the network to join actually the centralized space for work-related files, applications, and functions. And the servers also authenticate user credentials. So that's kind of cool from a flexibility point of view. You want to turn on the sharing options using remote access. And you want to set the server backup depending on the company's backup strategy. And finally, what you want to do is that you have to also configure the firewall to protect the network against anything, you can think about. Suspicious access, malicious access, whatever. Next, you want to secure the network and the server. So the server is the most important hardware in an office because it is responsible for different business functions like service provisions, data swapping, database management, and more. They are actually, the servers are the heart of daily operations and overall functioning of the business, which makes them attractive to hackers and other cyber criminals. Okay. So there are many ways actually to attack a server, such as putting malware, phishing scams, unsecured ports, drive-by cyber attacks, Trojans, and more. So servers are still vulnerable to attacks, even if they're not connected to the internet, which is why it's important to invest in robust cybersecurity measures. Now, if you think about creating a file server for a small company, there are certain mistakes to avoid, and those mistakes are going to help you. Avoiding those mistakes is going to save you thousands, if not millions of dollars, okay, in cost. First of all, don't pick the wrong server type, okay? Since there are many types of servers available for small businesses, it's very easy for business owners like you and me to pick the wrong one. So using the wrong server type often hinders business operations, which is why it's important to carefully choose the right one for you, okay? And it might even lead to total crashes that paralyze business functions and cost hundreds of dollars, if not thousands of dollars, on repair and damage control. So be thoughtful of that. One thing I want to say here is that physical servers are actually prone to a hardware damage as well as disasters like fires and floods. Number two, don't select the wrong operating system. So, like server types, choosing the wrong operating system may lead to lower productivity or worse, financial consequences. So, if the team is not familiar with the operating system in the servers, this prevents them from accomplishing different work related tasks quickly because they spend most of their time looking for ways to navigate through the operating system. Next, don't underestimate server management. Okay, server management is quite essential. Many business owners are actually clueless about the ins and outs of server management. Maybe that's your case too. Okay, so setting up servers is a complicated task that may expose the company to tons of security risks if done incorrectly. So without years of studying server management, it's actually impossible to know about the little details and best techniques in setting up a server. Finally, make sure you have enough power supply. So having actually an uninterruptible like a continuous power supply is extremely important, especially if you are like if your business has physical servers. This ensures that the servers are still accessible even if there is a power outage in the area. Make sure to have a backup power supply as well as proper ventilation in the designed server room to keep the business running even during power interruptions. This is really critical. Let me give you a few extras here. One thing you need to understand here is that when it comes to choosing the right server, you're not going to choose a server that really fits just your operations, but your staff has to be able to navigate the server. It has to be able to manage the server properly. Okay, so think about cloud servers versus on-premise servers. Whatever works for you, whatever works for rivals in your industry. What kind of operational setup do you have? Okay, maybe your setup will fit an on-premise server model or a cloud server model. One thing for sure, you have to when it comes to whatever servers you have, if you have particularly if you have an on-premise server, you have to think about protecting your servers. Okay, think about endpoint security, think about cybersecurity, think about server antivirus, think about training your staff members so that they know how to manage the server. And so you have a lot of servers for businesses and businesses with Windows, for instance, like Linux, You have a Red Hat, you have a CentOS, but the one that goes for you will depend on what kind of setup you want to have. Okay, but also one thing I want to say here is that every server contains specific hardware that determines its resource capacity, in particular CPU size, hard disk storage, and RAM. So RAM stands for random access memory. You may also want to incorporate backup hardware components such as hot swappable drive bays and also a redundant power supply, as well as ECC firmware that detects and corrects errors on the fly to reduce downtime. You do not want to have downtime at all, because downtime is a waste of time, waste of resources. Now, the exact specifications of your server will depend on what you need to do, right? What you want the server to do in a scalable manner. So, if you are looking for, let's say, if you are looking for a web hosting server, for instance, a web hosting server would have higher RAM requirements and would benefit from hardware redundancy because basically this web hosting server will work together with the database server. A server that actually provides database services would prioritize disk space and a hard drive capable of a fast write speeds, as well as support for RAID to provide reliability. Okay, so RAID actually stands for redundant array of independent disks. Means what? Means data is held redundantly in multiple disk drives, so that if one fails, the data itself is preserved down the road. Just remember that if you want to set up a server for your business, no matter what industry you're in, no matter what kind of setup you want to have, or no matter the size of your business, you always want to prepare. Okay, you want to document your network. You want to record the names of users, IP address, host name of each computer, serial numbers, and locations. Check both the hardware specifications and software requirements of your server. You may find that you need to upgrade the operating systems of computers on the network if you want to connect them to the server. You also need to gather something else. Gather any items you need for the installation, such as an Ethernet cable and external hard drive. So that's something to really think about. Build your server room. Think about the room characteristics. Okay, ideally you want to use a room with no windows. I've said this before, but I want to reiterate that you want to really think about no windows and the capacity to install cooling equipment and backup power, so that something were to happen, you know that you're safe. Selecting a space that's big enough that you can reach the front and back of each server rack, and if possible, gives your server space to grow as your business grows, right? So you want to think about having a server in a scalable manner. So you want to invest in the right equipment. You want to ensure security, and you want to keep it. You want to keep it actually organized. Okay. So choosing the right server for you will depend on the size of your office, the number and types of devices your business uses, what applications your business runs, what files employees need to share, how you will protect your network, and your future expansion plans, right? And in terms of setting up your network, don't forget that hardware is as important as software. So with hardware, I'm speaking about the server itself, the switches, okay, the routers, the cables, and so on and so forth. So you have a lot of flexibility there. In conclusion to this conversation, I spoke to you about how to create a file server for your company. I give you the generalities, the setup, the mistakes to avoid, and the extras. Now, conclusion. Thank you so much. God bless you. I will see you next time. Until then, remember, stay marvelous.